So we're going to jump right into this, and I had the pleasure of prepping with these gentlemen, and they might have slightly different opinions. So I'm going to start with you, Ed. Gannett's done a terrific job of covering this Oprah debate in the legislature, and including a series of articles authored by your reporter, Katie Sobko. Moreover, you personally penned an editorial for Gannett and USA Today back on March 15th, the day after the Oprah bill A4045 was pulled from the agenda of the Assembly Appropriations Committee.
Just a quick note of correction. We published at 6 a.m. The morning it was pulled. I heard from the governor's office at 7 a.m. and the bill was pulled at 10 a.m. So just want to be clear about the timing there. And of course, our colleagues elsewhere had written that same day too.
Oh, okay, all right. That's why we have a journalist to, keep me on track here. Thank you.
Yeah.
And while suggesting improvements could be made to the existing law, you used some pretty strong language to condemn the legislature's proposal. And you said, and I use your words here, masquerading as reform. And you said it would gut Oprah as we know it, and that it's unacceptable. So what was your biggest issue? Was it the speed with which this was moving or the specific revisions that were included in the legislation?
We weren't happy with either, to be honest with you. We have a deep commitment to transparency as part of our fundamental commitment to covering communities in New Jersey with fairness and clarity. So we were really upset last year with the Election Transparency Act. I've written about that extensively as well, and then what that did in terms of, we think, stepping New Jersey backward on campaign finance issues. And we were concerned last year as well when the legislature attempted to quickly insert an Oprah reform bill. And so the speed of this was distressing. To know that the effort to undertake this was not a priority of the administration's, not necessarily a priority in the Assembly, but certainly obviously a priority in the Senate, was disturbing to us. And then the details in terms of rolling back access to different kinds of documents, the introduction of forms, and sort of basically turning Oprah down on the volume dial really concerns us and continues to concern us. I was just talking with Mayor Muir, though. I mean, there are things that we think can be improved. I would be the first to tell you that Oprah is not built for the digital realities in which we live today, and especially not built for the digital realities where across different kinds of governments in New Jersey, we have a whole manner of digital systems that just run the gamut. No two systems are the same, whether that's data that's collecting parking fee materials or data or systems that create tax bills. In terms of creating an Oprah for the 2020s, we think there's a lot of room to grow. But in terms of the overall intention of the law, we will defend it until our final moment.
Thank you. We're going to get into that a little bit later in the discussion about maybe Oprah 2.0. So I look forward to that. Mayor, it's a good time for me to ask you a question now. The New Jersey League of Municipalities, an organization where you serve as the chair, as I mentioned, of the Intra Municipal Affairs Committee, penned their own response from Executive Director Mike Serra on that same day, expressing disappointment that the bill was pulled and urging for amendments to be made that would secure its passage. The League's statement conceded that it was a, quote, complicated issue, but stressed that it included common sense reforms and its intent was to modernize the Open Public Records Act. So we love the open debate among informed and intelligent panelists, and that's why we've put all of you on stage together. Why does the view of the municipalities override the call for transparency?
I'm going to say it doesn't override the call for transparency. I think all municipalities, I would hope, and as representing the Conference of Mayors and the League, we support transparency. I think that's how our government functions and will function better, especially in a state like New Jersey. But when the mechanism of achieving that transparency, in some cases it gets abused or is out of reality of what the technology exists. As you just shared too, there are multiple systems within local government. So if you're looking at your local government, you're looking at police, you're looking at parking authorities. What does that mean when it comes to transparency? So really the goal of it is to take something that's 20 years old and finding a way to fix some of the things that we've discovered over those past 20 years. I mean, I think anything that you established 20 years ago, you're going to find some cracks in it that need repair. And then also the technology, as we shared, has changed. And what does that look like for the future as we go forward? And the time is now to fix it. And I just want to kind of go back up. I think the speed may have even been a problem for the municipalities. You know, we want to see this change, and not because we don't want transparency, but again, we want, at least my perspective, we want small government. And some of the things that we're facing right now do add to our government and some excess and some cost that I don't want to continue to pay for as a mayor.
Thank you. Dr. Dworkin, you have strong relationships with legislators on both sides of the aisle and are widely seen as the go-to voice for members of the media to comment on policy and political issues facing the Garden State. So while you might not have a horse in this race per se, like your fellow panelists, where do you see this going?
Politically, we have to understand the season we're in. We're in the budget season. And the way that you envision and try to understand the budget season in Trenton is that effectively it ends up with three people sitting at the table: the Senate President, the Speaker of the Assembly, and the Governor. And they're playing a very high-stakes game of poker. And what happens in this high-stakes game of poker is that everything ends up being connected. You want this, you want supplemental aid for all those school districts that might have lost money, then I want Oprah. Well, you want Oprah, wait, then I want more transportation funding. Or wait, I want to get rid of the CBT. And all of this gets connected as we go through the next few months. And so even when my expectation is that we will see a different looking Oprah bill introduced in the next 2 weeks, that it'll be introduced in the Assembly and the Senate, that they expect the governor to sign it. They're not going to pass something that they haven't already know that the governor will sign. That doesn't mean it's not connected to a whole bunch of other things. And you can even see in the Senate where there's efforts to try and make sure that the Assembly delivers on their votes for the Oprah bill, and there might be delay on some other Assembly priority that has to go through the Senate. So all of this ends up being connected. The biggest issue will be the fees and who pays. That is clearly the big one. It's a red line for a lot of different folks who have a stake in this. I am not sure that the current system by which whoever prevails in litigation is the one who wins. I'm not sure that's necessarily going to go away just to get the votes. And we should just be clear, the most important numbers in this debate about Oprah are 41, 21, and 1. It's something I teach my students, and I'm sure everybody here knows, but just to review it, 41 are the bare minimum number of votes to pass something out of the Assembly. 21 is what you need to get something out of the Senate, and 1 is the governor. And you could see a situation where maybe the Senate has the votes, but the Assembly, somebody's holding out. And they have, the Democrats have 52, and they obviously control the agenda there, so you can let a lot of people off if they're uncomfortable voting for this and still find the 41. But those are the numbers they're going to have to reach. And so anything that gets too much heat, too much controversy, I think it will make it a little bit harder. But we expect something in the next couple weeks, and I expect there'll be lots of side agreements in terms of other legislation that we would think has nothing to do with this particular debate, but has to do with whether this thing passes.
And side note, there are some that would say this isn't actually a partisan issue. There's now a co-signer on the bill. May or may not be here.
He's in the back.
But what do you make of this becoming a less partisan issue, and they're having a co-signer on it now?
Senator Bucco is standing in the back of the room, so I'm going to be speaking for him now, and you can talk to him in a moment and find out whether anything I'm about to say is correct. But let me offer you 3 reasons why outside observers think the senator got on the bill as a sponsor. 1, he believes that there need to be changes need to be made. He just believes that something needs to be done. Second thing, I think the Republican leader in the Senate believes that he can make positive changes, that the amendments that he will be able to insist on in exchange for his support are going to make this a better bill than the one we originally saw that was pulled. And third, it would seem the Democrats, who don't have as big a majority in the Senate as they do in the Assembly, need Republican votes. They want to make sure, by doing this, they need his support. And so that, we were at another function with the state chamber a few weeks ago. And one of the big debates, as I moderated a panel of the legislative leaders, was who gets invited to the table. You know, the reality is the Democrats control the agenda, they have the votes, and if they don't need the Republicans, they don't ask the Republicans to come and sit at the table. That's usually what happens with the budget. In this case, I think the fact that Leader Bucco is on indicates to those of us who are Trenton watchers, they need the votes and they need the support, and they want to be able to say this was a bipartisan effort. And so part of the final version, which I'm not sure, I can't tell you has been definitively settled upon, will include his input as well. Hope that's right, Senator. Thank you. I got a thumbs up for the cameras, just letting you know.
Thank you, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot. It just was such a good opportunity. So thank you, Senator. So I'm going to move on to the next question, and thank you. The acting state comptroller, Kevin Walsh, who testified in March before the Senate Budget and Appropriations Committee, said it was his belief that making official documents harder to get would not only lead to less transparency in government, but also to more corruption, fraud, waste, and abuse, adding that less transparency in government could very likely be more expensive and not save tax dollars, as some suggest that changes to the Oprah law might promote. Which of you wants to jump in on this one?
Well, that certainly aligns with our perspective. We think that, again, transparency is essential in a political culture like this one, and I can't compromise on that belief, because we just have such a long and frankly sad track record here, and I think that Oprah remains a very valuable tool in a quiver with few arrows in it, frankly, to keep our politics in New Jersey in a place where we can all feel comfortable taking part in them, frankly. And so I think in the long run, it does probably provide some measure of savings. And certainly, if we look at the work that our network has undertaken using the tool, the Sunday after the bill was pulled, my colleague Jim O'Neill, who is a longtime environmental reporter and is now our investigative editor for the USA Today Network in New Jersey, basically wrote a litany of story, it was a list of stories that and investigations we've undertaken just in the last couple of years that were heavily reliant on Oprah. The athletic debt across the street at Rutgers. Most recently, we used the tool effectively to demonstrate that we have some work to do in firming up the details with FIFA and our World Cup arrangement for 2026. Certainly, our coverage of the disaster during COVID at the veterans' homes was benefited from the tool. And I think New Jersey and the citizens and its citizens are better informed as a result of certainly that work, and the work could not have happened without the tool. And so, in the long run, I think being able to shine a light on the inner workings of government at every level, at the municipal level, at the county level, at the state level, is just essential for our core of journalists, but also more essential for people who are, concerned citizens about any number of topics. We all know who these people are in our communities who care about all range of different things, who use this tool. It's just a good tool, and of course it can be improved upon, and we want to have a seat at the table in talking about that, certainly. But I think it's just essential for us.
I guess I'll jump in. I see the perspective that Ed shares, but when it comes down to it, I'm going to share something that it's really just about good government. I mean, you want transparency, and if you want good government, you want transparency. So there's some residuals of bad governments, especially in New Jersey, as we talk about how things are linked just now and side deals as was shared. But the reality is, I think times have continued to change. So in 2002, when Oprah started, their government was relatively closed. I think the pandemic's made a big difference. So even a small town like Bethlehem Township, all of our meetings are Zoom and then posted on our website within the next week. Those are our township committee meetings and our planning board meetings. All the minutes are there. Based on additional social media and a lot of other access points, the world has changed quite significantly on how you get information for local government. And whether Oprah is modified or not doesn't change what I'm going to do. I'm going to do what I think is right and what's good for government, whether somebody can file an Oprah request or not. But taking that a step back, I don't think a lot of the changes that are presented are going to restrict documents that are going to unveil some of the things that you've shared. It's really a way for local government to be more efficient and more cost effective. So I don't believe that it would actually add cost. I think if you're looking for good government, you're looking to, of course, maintain, I would love in New Jersey to say reduce, but at least maintain your tax rate, lower your debt. And I think taking the time to answer some of these commercial requests that municipalities see, some of these, as we talk about some harassment requests, I have a full-time clerk and a deputy clerk, and it takes quite a bit of time. And as president of the Conference of Mayors, I talk to larger municipalities that have deputy clerks solely committed to Oprah responses. Now that's a cost that we all bear. And so if I have a commercial company coming in and asking for all of my pool permits so that they can send a flyer out to sell them a fence, why should my taxpayers be paying for that? And how is that efficient? And how is that good government?
Jump in.
Okay, just a couple things. First of all, just on the commercial interests and their Oprah requests, I think that is going to be something that a lot of people who are going to be actually voting on this legislation will agree on. And in theory, that would help small towns.
Right.
It would help with the efficiency.
Right.
Because the moment you take all of those requests and push them off and say, those aren't part, that's not part of open government that we were talking about, to be used as a data collection agency for commercial interests, well, then your clerk has more time to focus on, this is what taxpayer advocate Jones in our town really wants. Because right now they're filled with a lot. So you're taking things off their plate in order for there to be more time, quicker responses. So in that sense, this may well improve efficiency. I just want to say something about the controller's idea about this is going to lead to corruption. It's been my experience that people don't need Oprah in order to be corrupt. That the bad actors, there are 15,000 or so elected officials in this state, 15,000. An overwhelming number of them are good people, well-intentioned, just want to do a good job as they see it for their town, their district, etc. There are bad actors. They're not sitting there saying, oh, Oprah got weak and now we can do all the stuff and we wanted to do. I mean, it's just, they're bad actors and they don't need Oprah one way or the other in order to be bad.
That's a good point, and you all jumped ahead of me as I expected you might, but there are a lot of commercial entities that are seeking information for commercial use at the municipal level, and examples include real estate agents who are just bombarding the system, pet supply companies who want the information from on pet licenses so they can solicit for gain, right? And that really isn't the role of the clerks, the deputy clerks. So I'm not jumping in with an opinion. I'm merely saying they jumped ahead on the question of the many municipal requests that have, I guess, created a bottleneck. And I think, that is one of the things that was the goal of the proposed legislation, or is the goal. So I'm going to read three of the more controversial points, because you all seem to be agreeing. I was looking for a little more, But I'm going to read three of the more controversial provisions from the Oprah bill that was pulled. And the first is that it would end the mandatory rule that requires public entities that lose record disputes in court to pay the winning party's legal fees. The second is making, quote, draft documents private and exempt from public access. And the third is allowing agencies to seek a protective court order if they deem certain requests to be harassing. So I'd love your thoughts on any of these. Which, if any of them, goes too far and should not be part of the future legislation? So those are that seem to be the three sticking points. What do you think?
Everybody's looking over this way, so I'll jump in. I'll probably have to add some comments after as we go around. But ending the mandatory rule requiring public agencies that lose records to pay the fees. Again, we're talking about small government efficiency, so now the government's absorbing some legal costs, and sometimes this can be significant. And the reality is it's turned into a cottage industry for some. So there are municipalities that have faced millions of dollars that the taxpayers now bear because of that. The reality is the Oprah has proposed, and we'll see where it goes, is allowing some fees to be assessed, and maybe they're more reasonable. I would like to see none, obviously, but I think that would de-incentivize some of that cottage industry and some of the negative and Oprah requests, and maybe even those harassment ones. And with that, too, I think, it gives you a path for the harassment. We're not looking to eliminate people from, our citizens from asking the questions, but you receive multiple questions, especially towns with larger police departments. We'll see multiple, and not that they shouldn't be under a scope, but when you're answering the same question every single day. I talked to one of our larger cities in the state. They receive the same Oprah request about police records every single day, and should they be then expending that time and spending those dollars answering those questions? And then for the draft documents, again, I think it goes back to the good government at base. Just because Oprah's out there, people aren't necessarily going to do the right thing. If people are going to do something wrong, they're going to do something wrong. And when you're trying to negotiate a legal matter within your town or negotiate a contract, there are a lot of discussions. There's a lot of draft documents that are out there that don't end up as that final document. And so how important are they really as you work through something? Again, from experience, Bethlehem Township's a committee form of government. Quite a few municipalities are. And then if you have a council and mayor, the councils have subcommittees. So there's a lot of discussions that are out there, but is that what really gets voted on by the time it gets there? And that's what's most important, that final contract. Those drafts may not necessarily provide that transparency that people think they do, because that's not where the end result ends up.
Ed, what do you think about draft documents?
Yeah, I have a completely different perspective on that, because our view is that draft documents show the process, and the public is entitled to see the process. And so certainly I understand the mayor's position on the final thing is the final thing. And in most cases, I can see that logic applying. But, just looking at the way that we're trying to understand what we're wrapped up in terms of the World Cup bid, much of that is still in process and still in progress. And so draft documents are going to be certainly important to, we believe at least, certainly important to the reporting of how that bid comes together. And certainly we think that they, from a journalistic perspective, you want to be able to tell as complete a narrative about it, whatever it is you're presenting to your reader. And understanding the process at which we got from point A to point B certainly involves understanding what's in draft documents, in my view. So.
Yeah, just a quick point. There's a reason I'm not a lawyer, because I couldn't tell you about this stuff. But I think as it gets negotiated, I talked about those numbers, 41, 21, and 1. The numbers that we don't have are how many draft documents are there? There has been no massive study that quantitatively talks about Oprah, because what we're looking at are these various anecdotal evidence. This municipality gets a request for every email about that involves the word arrest from the police department. Right. And you start by getting a log, which tells you how many emails there should be. Then you ask for every email. And if you are two off, you now sue. And this is what we're talking when the mayor talks about a cottage industry. Somebody who doesn't care about these things, but wants to say, there were supposed to be 11,000. You gave me 10,998. I sue. And now you pay my legal fees, which are not regulated. So you want to charge $800 an hour for doing this. This is a way somebody could make money on it. Trying to eliminate those abuses while still keeping the process open for other, very legitimate investigative transparency issues is difficult. But this process is being driven by anecdotal evidence. And I think that's how the legislature is going to be operating, because they want to get something done at this point. So there isn't time to do a 3-year study, as those in the world of public policy might say, that's how you should do this. It's going to be driven by this horror story or that horror story coming from municipalities.
I have a question for Ed. So when you're talking about the World Cup, so as you're trying to provide the coverage for that, what is your goal from a journalistic standpoint?
We want to understand essentially what the administration has agreed to in pursuing this FIFA bid. Clearly a passion project for the governor. We need to look no further than the budget address to see that. And certainly an exciting, event for our region, and certainly an exciting economic event, we hope, for everyone who could stand to benefit from it. But there's a lot of devil in the details with this, in terms of the way public dollars are going to flow toward renovations at the stadium, the way that promotions are going to be paid for between New York City and New Jersey as we run up to this thing, and what the partnership between the city and New Jersey looks like in terms of the play out on the bid committee and all of those things. So in our view, that there's, and you could just take World Cup and replace it with any other noun that, relates to things that we're actively covering now, whether that be New Jersey Transit, the budget process, any number of municipal tax and development issues. For what we do, especially, it's just an essential tool, and we think it provides a great balance, a great check on what public entities are doing, which we take that responsibility for what we do very seriously.
Do you believe finding those draft documents and getting them out to the public, do they come out in time that you can then influence the thoughts of the citizenry?
It certainly is situational, right? But I think that even after decisions have been made, people have the right to understand the processes that we're undertaking to make them. So, I understand where you're heading there, and that the net result is the net result. And I think certainly from likely a municipal standpoint, this is an issue with gradation, right? So the issues that municipal governments typically are tackling are far less complicated in most cases than a World Cup bid, right? Or the finances of a publicly funded transportation system. So I will grant you that, but again, I just think that I think we're better if we let our citizens understand the process.
I respect that you saw where I was going with that, but that was the point. Again, we're really trying to find what the best government is, and some of these changes aren't going to make government less worthy, because you're going to have individuals taking advantage, and you're still working to find the best end result, and whatever that is, changing and having access to some of these draft documents isn't necessarily going to get you there.
I think we'll agree to disagree, Mayor.
I was going to say that, but even better.
Trying my best to add the drama.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So there was a New Jersey Supreme Court ruling that left many unsatisfied, that drew a distinction between what records are accessible under OPRA versus what records are accessible via common law right of access. In essence, the decision said that things like police disciplinary reports, including internal affairs reports, dash camera videos, and other law enforcement related records are accessible, but only if the requester can pass a higher bar than that which is needed for OPRA. Additionally, people who sue for public records under common law right of access have to pay for their own attorneys, win or lose. So do you believe that the future changes to the OPRA law should expand access to law enforcement records as well? And if so, how? Or do you think this distinction is fair?
That's a very complicated one, and one that I've dwelled on for some time. I have had occasion in my role as an editor at the Record in recent years to have oversight of coverage of the Paterson Police Department, which, as we know, has had a series of challenges, internal and external, over the last few years, and obviously in the last year has made a lot of headlines given the Attorney General's assumption of control there. So we generally view police records as essential to understanding how public safety is being approached in our communities. And so I think that is, I'm convicted on that, and convicted that those records should be public. The police officers are publicly paid servants of their communities, and I think that's the test that I meet that on. So we're broadly in favor of transparency around police records.
I think this is probably as Ed shared, I think we'll agree on that this is probably the most complicated aspect of it. And Professor Dworkin may actually be the best person to answer this because you're in the middle. But I would share, we're trying to balance the citizens' right of knowledge to then the government's pending sharing of information and what that does for public safety. And when we talk about technology changes and changes to Oprah, this is the area where we see the greatest amount, because a lot of these technologies just didn't simply exist when Oprah was introduced. And then how are they disseminated? How are they controlled? And these have implications beyond just public knowledge. They have implications about technology, IT technology, understanding, you can take a video technically and without saying where somebody is, start figuring out where a victim may be and what their rights are. So I'm not, we're going to agree on the fact that this needs a lot of reform, and this is probably the area where there's going to be a lot of discussion. We'll probably disagree on what municipalities and governments and police departments can share based on public safety and security. But this is going to be the most complicated area. And this is where I was somewhat disappointed in the speed, because something like this does take time. So obviously I want to see Oprah reform, but I want to make sure that we make the right decisions, and taking the time to have these discussions is where, it's good to see bipartisan support and being able to start down that road in a productive manner.
Yeah, I think we all agree it's complicated.
Right.
That's this. Bill Clinton once famously said, "If it were easy, it'd be done by now." And this is not easy, especially on this, because obviously we've seen nationally in Paterson and locally issues where understanding police behavior and police misbehavior, to be very euphemistic about it, is critical to public policy making and to holding people accountable. At the same time, we see situations where body cam footage of a female under the age of 30 who is stopped with a DUI ends up on the internet, ends up in a situation where someone is profiting off the public link. And that's where I couldn't tell you how many cases that is, but someone has that anecdote and someone says, if that was your daughter, you'd be very upset that particular amount of public information is now being distributed and used in this way. And so I think what we can expect from the legislation is a real debate and an effort to carve out certain elements of police activity from being Oprah accessible, and leaving a lot of it in because there is that public demand, but carving out certain things. And there have been, this is not the first time Oprah has come up for discussion in the world of Jersey policymaking, and previous suggestions have been, this is where we need a study. This is where the Attorney General and a blue ribbon panel needs to come together and try to figure out some agreeable sense of rules that we might not be able to figure out over the next 2 weeks or 9 weeks before this thing really gets done.
Let me just affirm that idea of a Attorney General-led blue ribbon commission on this issue. Body cam is very complicated, as is dash cam, and we, as an industry and as practitioners in our own newsrooms, are very thoughtful, or at least we try to be very thoughtful and deliberative, and take our time on how we use those records when we procure them in our reporting to benefit the public's understanding of whatever has happened. That said, I think that there really does need to have a discussion around, perceptions of victims. I think the mayor was talking a bit about victims. I think Ben's point about people who are, body cam video. It used to be that if you were arrested for driving under the influence, you would end up in a police blotter, maybe in your weekly paper, or if your daily paper was robust enough, as we once were, that your name and the time and where you were when you were pulled over would be published as a matter of public record. I think the body cam aspect and the way that Ben shared that anecdote is just proof positive that there does need to be more thoughtful conversation about how the decisions on release are made. But at the end of the day, as I've been clear, we're convicted that these are ultimately things that the public has a right to.
I'm just going to add, so if you look at the police department, and then you can come back and look at the Oprah exemptions, I think there are 27 exemptions from Oprah. And if you actually took the time and you Google those 27, suggest if like later on you have nothing to do tonight or you can't sleep, go ahead and do that. But then you think about them and what police departments do, they're very sensitive. And so the police department touches on all 27 of those, whereas even local municipalities may not touch on all 27. And so that's why this bill, as originally introduced, did have an access information task force put together. Now, maybe that should have been done initially and then some of those items put in here. That's up for discussion, but that is a mechanism, and there does need to be further discussion around that. But this bill did provide a provision to start that discussion.
Thank you. You're all jumping ahead to my question, so I appreciate that you're a step ahead of me. I want to go a little bit deeper on this whole idea of Oprah 2.0. Many supporters of reform have suggested that Oprah is outdated, as many of you have alluded to already, and it was created before many of the technological advances that we now have, and there's been more incidents of identity theft, data mining, AI usage, and cyber attacks. So have any of you thought this down the road on ways that we could modernize Oprah? Are there conversations, for example, at the league or amongst mayors, how this can be accomplished, how we can minimize risk, if you will?
I mean, I think we need to adopt some of the technology ourselves. And actually, Ed and I were talking briefly. I was recently discussing with I would say a technology implementation company, and they were trying to figure out local government, and they had asked me some questions about
trying to figure out local government. That's a long
in the realm of say cloud in cloud computing and security, and they simply didn't grasp the concept I shared. Whatever you do on the corporate side, government is about 10 years behind for a variety of reasons. For me, a lot of it was security-based because I'm not going to put my tax information on any one of the three, major clouds. But the other point is, too, a lot of these technology systems have cropped up, and so my tax system is one system, my dog and cat license is another system. Here in New Brunswick, I'm sure the parking authority is one other system. And so how do we do that? So I could, one thing I would like to see is some advancement and working together in local government to take advantage of some of the technologies to bring these things together so that, again, we're about transparency. It's just how we can efficiently do that. And so if we look at technology and how we can put that together to implement, I would love to see something come into my clerk and then have an automated process that goes through the proper departments and then comes back through. And of course, there's going to have to be some human review because of security and concerns. But I think we can take advantage of the technology to be more efficient, save some dollars, and then also prevent some of these issues that we're having with Oprah currently.
Yeah, I think this is an area where we do have agreement. Our view on this is that the technologies around the various systems that are used by governments across the state are probably not where they need to be. And we certainly believe in the idea of working to make data as it's stored by governments of any size as safe and secure as possible. That's a fundamental. We've got to be able to trust the veracity of the information that we're trying to keep transparent. And so I think there's a lot more to be discussed here. And I think OPRA 2.0 is likely to be, in this vein at least, a kind of continuous OPRA 2.1, OPRA 2.2, OPRA 2.3, because the technology is evolving faster than we're able to keep pace with from a policy perspective. But I think, again, we want transparent data and transparent information about how our governments are operating, but it's got to be trustable, transparent data. And so that's where I think there is opportunity for consensus and further smart conversation.
Just offer three quick points. I imagine the bill will, I think there's serious consideration trying to provide some financial incentives to municipalities and other agencies to digitize things that can be digitized. I want everybody to start thinking about libraries, because there's a whole bunch of people in New Jersey who can't access something that's digital because they don't have a computer. They're not wired. We assume everyone in this room is, but there's a whole bunch of folks, citizens, who deserve access, and they can only get that through a free public library. So you could see an incentive program there and there so that people can access it. Second thing, I know you didn't mention this, but let me just mention artificial intelligence, which is the Wild West. Nobody understands where that's going to be in 6 months. And so this gets to the point that I want to emphasize what Ed just pointed out. One way the legislation could deal with this is by having a sunset. Say we do it for 5 years and then revisit, because technology is changing so fast. And there may well be, we're going to pass this through, but if there are things that we regret, no one wants to go 22 years and then have to finally get the movement to do it. So you could force yourself into reconsidering the entire system with a sunset provision. That's the kind of thing that could be negotiated in the next few weeks.
Interesting.
The sunset is I think smart. I think that's the challenge when you look at 2.0. Like you said, you're going to see 2.1, 2.2, and New Jersey doesn't have. I think there's been 2 bills presented so far about AI, and this is one of those opportunities to have some cross pollination across topics, and maybe there are some ways to have an AI bill and then have a linkage to OPRA and find ways to find a pathway forward. So, because even a 5-year sunset at this point, we're probably vastly out of date at that point, unfortunately.
No, I had not heard that idea about sunsetting. Is that yours, or have you heard that?
I'm not the smartest guy in this world, and so
I'm not asking
no,
you. I'm just
other people.
Is it out there?
I think it's an obvious response to how do we handle what comes next that we won't necessarily anticipate.